Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Trinity stamps. Today we're going to be looking at these little 3x4 sets. These are all part of the Love Danny series, which is very much like really pretty hand lettered. So these are two of the bigger sets that are a very similar style. If you wanted to do a larger image, but I stuck with the 3x4. So some of them have dies, some of them don't, but you can use them kind of similarly. So we're going to kind of tackle some different ways you can use I don't even want to say simpler. They are simpler images. I guess they're just very simple outline images. They're beautiful, and I don't mean to distract that because I know how much work they are. But we're going to look at the different ways that you can kind of step them up. Because obviously 3x4s are a great size, but they're a lower price point if you're looking to add something small to your collection. These are really great encouragement cards. Like a lot of these smaller ones are super awesome for just like a little pick-me-up, which I love. So anywho, I'm stamping them all out on Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock because I am going to be using my alcohol markers, my Copic markers, to color them, and I am stamping them in a ink that is safe for alcohol markers. And then we're just going to dive into the coloring. It is a longer video because we're doing, what are we doing? 5 cards? We're doing 5 cards. And I tried my very best to leave as much coloring in as possible, but that does mean I had to speed it up. So you have, if you're watching on YouTube, you have ways that you can slow that down. I would mute it, otherwise I'm going to sound very funny. But if you'd like to see the coloring a little bit slower, you can slow the speed down on YouTube. So here I am, the ones that have the dies, which are these 3, the You Make a Difference Every Day, Life is Tough, But So Are You, and You Are All Kinds of Wonderful. Those all have dies. So I am going to utilize those dies. The Oh Yes You Can and the Happy Birthday to a Sweet Friend, either they don't have dies or I don't have them. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have the dies, if there are. But I think that they don't. Anywho, so we're going to utilize those a little bit differently. So first things first, one of the ways that you can take a clean and simple design and make it very striking is by using complementary colors. So complementary colors are opposite from each other on the color wheel, and they bring a immense amount of contrast, which adds a immense amount of interest. So this sun, I'm going to do in some yellow and orange shades. Orange, complementary color is blue, and yellow's complementary color is purple. So either one of those would have worked. But I chose to go with the blue because blue is my boyfriend. So we're just gonna fill it in. I'm going to still shade it, like I would normally do. And the same thing with the rays. I'm going to shade them as well, kind of darker toward the sun and then lighter as they get out. But really, this is super simple coloring. We're just doing like a 3-color blend. I think for the orange, we might have 4 colors, but you're just going to flick your colors out. I try not to create what I call a wall of color. So when you're doing your flicking, you don't want all of the flicks to end at the same exact spot. They blend much better if they are varying lengths. So I try to make sure that when I'm flicking that I am varying my lengths. For the lightest color, obviously this is going to be, on the edges. So I just kind of bring that in from the edge to the colors I've already put down. For the oranges, I'm going to do the same thing, trying to make sure that I vary with the lengths of my flicking, darkest color closest to the surface of the sun, and then blend those out. Every time I put down my darkest color, the next color I bring over it, I'm completely covering the previous color. So when I'm putting down the Y09, I'm coming in with the Y07 and going right over top of it and then slightly extending it out. This is going to help your alcohol markers blend in the fibers of your paper because there's enough saturation to help them do that. So for the sentiment, that's where I'm going to utilize that complementary color, and I'm going to do blue, as I previously explained. So on almost every single one of these, on almost every single one of these, I did like a color gradient. And that was just kind of like darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. And that's just how I prefer to do it. But you can color these in solid and then still do like the extras that we're going to add and still get a really great card. So if you find that you are not in a place where you're comfortable, or maybe you don't even like the look of a gradient within the letters, you can absolutely color them in one solid color and it would be fine. There is not a lot of real estate there. I just like to, with my clean and simple cards, I try to add something that's more interesting with each section that I'm doing. So here I used the darker orange to add a cast shadow. And this is another thing that you're going to see a lot of with these cards. It's going to, adding a shadow helps kind of boost the, in this case, the letters up from the background. Here, I decided to add one kind of like darker stripe to the left-hand side of each one of those. And then I'm on the opposite side, I'm going to add a little highlight with my white gel pen. And I also added a white highlight along the edge of the sun. And then for the little letters, I'm going to go in and add a couple of little, highlights. There isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. I typically try to make sure that I'm always adding them like in the same areas for each section. This one is a little bit different because it does require a little bit of freehand, but don't be scared because you're going to see even this one comes out just fine and I am not doing a great job of getting it even. So happy birthday to a sweet friend. I was like, okay, well, what could I put here in the background that would make this more interesting to look at? And so I was thinking of sweets and I was like, okay, well, I don't want to have to do anything that I'm going to have to like sit here and draw and all of that. Speaking of sweets, Love Danny, which is this collection, has done lots of stamps for Trinity, and she does have some that are actual fruits and some other things that are in their on sale section right now. I'll link that below. But anywho, so I was like, okay, what would be like a really easy fruit to do in the background? So it's summer. I immediately went to watermelon. So that's what you see me doing here. It isn't perfect. At the end, it's going to look like almost like an aerial view of like two halves of a watermelon. But you could do this for a lot of different fruits. You could do, slices of orange or lemon or lime. You could do a slice of kiwi. You could do grapes with little circles. Like there's a ton of stuff that you could do to play up that sweet. And if you're feeling like, hey, I want to give, maybe some more illustration or some more drawing a go, you absolutely could, delve into cupcakes, or you could combine it with one of the cupcakes that Trinity has. They have a what is it? Is it called? Hey, I can't remember. It's the one that they came out with like for their anniversary. It's a great little cupcake. I've used it before. But anyway, so you can incorporate those other things for sweet, but I wanted something that was going to be a one layer and kind of match the same vibe that we already had going on with the rest of the cards. So for the watermelon, obviously, I need to keep that edge where it's going to get lighter, where it moves into the rind. So I am using those lighter, like reddish pinks to make sure I have that halo. And then I will go in with my greens. My darkest green is going to be on the outer edge, for the rind. And then we'll get consecutively lighter until we get to that, like, in between section, which I used a R00 to kind of blend into that YG01. Super simple, really fun, kind of like summer birthday card. Also obviously very gender neutral. So this one was a lot of fun to do. For the watermelon seeds, just to touch on that, I created the seed with my lightest color, which was a C7. And then I added the black to the part I wanted to be the darkest, so like the bottom of the teardrop, and then blended that out with a C9, and then I was good with that. For the sweet, I am using the same reds with the addition of AR59 so that it'll be a little bit darker and create a little bit of contrast between the watermelon and my letters. And so I'm doing that same gradient that we've talked about, just working my way up to that R32, which is my lightest color. For the friend, I'm going to use the same greens in a gradient from like bottom to top. I didn't really kind of stretch, past that style of gradient, with the exception of one. I call it my Rainbow Bright card, with the exception of the Rainbow Bright card, which I think is actually the last one we're going to color. So these are just some things, I know not everybody is a huge fan of clean and simple cards. I always have been, like even from the very beginning of my, card making career. For the happy birthday, I chose to just color them in solid, the darker color, so that they would stand out. But from the beginning of my card making career, I was always a huge clean and simple fan. In fact, the first challenge that I ever won, I won it with a clean and simple card, which is crazy. That was such a long time ago, because I started card making back in like 2010, I think. Yeah, but I didn't start entering challenges, I think, until like 2011 or anyway. Little walk down memory lane. I still, clean and simple cards still hold a place in my heart. And I know that the trend of the industry is going back to more of like a clean and layered. There's kind of like some vintage vibes, which I am not opposed to. I'm not opposed to like the shabby chic era. But that doesn't mean that there isn't room for everything. And I am still going to make, the kind of cards that I am happy with. I think it's super fun to try different styles and see kind of what part of it you like, or maybe what part's not for you. And I think that exploration is really, really important. But I think it's also just as important to make sure that you're making something that makes your heart happy and doesn't just go along with the trends. So here we're adding more of that white gel pen. I added the clear shimmer a little earlier before I added my shadow. I got a little excited, I guess. And then I'm going to add a white highlight to all of those little seeds. Now, for this next one, we're going to do still the color gradient, but we're going to mix color families. And so the trick for mixing color families is, at least with Copic markers, is you have to look at that last number. So I'm starting with my darkest violet color at the bottom, and then I'm working my way up to the lightest color, which is a V01. And I know by looking at that one will blend in very nicely to either my B01 or my B00. So I went with a B00. And then like each one, I'm either going to have to match the darkest color, like, because that's where I leave off at, or I'm going to have to match the lightest color. So where the purple and the blue met was the lightest color, where the blue and the green meet is going to be the darker color. So my darkest color for the blue is an B04, and I am going to blend that into a YG17. Now the 4 and the 7 are kind of far away from each other, so you'll see here that I am going to go back in and work over that area again with the blue, and again with the green with the YG03. It probably would have been a better blend with the YG03 to the B04, but it wouldn't have given me nearly as much contrast. And so I was willing to do the extra work of going over it a time or two to make sure that they were going to blend together and I would still be able to keep my contrast. So that's just something that you have to decide. If you have something like this where you have maybe very little room, understand that it's easier to blend colors in smaller spaces. It's much harder to blend colors in larger spaces because you have to have such consistent saturation throughout the entirety of the space that it can be more challenging. But in these ones, these are good ones to kind of experiment with because we don't have a lot of room, and so they'll typically blend pretty nicely together. So the yellow was for like the yellow into green, yellow into orange was indifference. And then for the make A, I just left it all orange. And then the U, I blended my orange into my reds. Now I skipped what was my darkest red before, that R59, because there's nothing in here that is that dark besides the V09. And that's all the way at the bottom of my card. So I just went with the lighter reds. And again, I was blending the Y09, no, YR, it's YR. See, I'm getting myself confused, so I'm probably confusing you all. The YR09 with the RV29, so both of them end in 9, so those blended really nicely together. So for the rest of these little hearts, I am just going to pick, like I tried to pick random colors. I tried not to put them too close to each, the letters or the words that I use the color with. And then, of course, I'm going to do that cast shadow. So we haven't really talked too much about the cast shadow. I typically do mine as if my light source was in my top right-hand corner, which means my shadows will be down and to my left, so bottom left. And I always do it that way. That is the way I'm most comfortable with, because that is the way that I was taught in high school art class. And it's just stayed with me ever since. So I would suggest you just pick a way that you're comfortable with and stick with it. But throughout the entire piece, there should be consistency with your shadows all being on the same side. So if you wanted to do bottom left this time, and then on the next card you want to try out bottom right or top right, that's fine. But you can only try out one at a time on a singular piece, or your shadows aren't going to make any sense. But adding those shadows does lift up your coloring and make it look more dimensional. And it's the same thing with the white highlight. Adding the white highlight helps to create that dimension so that it looks like there is, it's more raised up and it's more three-dimensional and it's catching that light. So these are just really simple things that you can add that will help make your coloring of a clean and simple card still eye-catching enough for you to be happy with it. So this one, what we're going to do here is we're going to add pattern. There's something else we're going to do to this one, but it's going to be later on when we're building the card. So for right now, we're just going to add pattern. So we're doing that same gradient, darkest at the bottom, working up lighter to the top to help add that dimension. And for this one, instead of blending the rainbow throughout the entire piece, we're actually just going to color each word a different color of the rainbow. And there isn't a right or wrong way to do it. You just kind of pick the ones that you like best. And then we're going to add a tone on tone pattern. So in this case, I just did some dots with the blue, and I just followed that gradient right up. For the I'm going to do green, and I'm going to do a diagonal stripe. So there, whatever pattern you can think of, it's an endless, but it helps it from being too busy by doing it tone on tone. So this one is going to be like open polka dots for the purple. And then we're going to I didn't do anything on the butt because it's just too tiny, or the banner. I wanted the banner to stay clean. But the U, I did like a crosshatch. So like almost like a plaid. But doing these and, adding that pattern, you can do it with the tone on tone like we're doing here. It helps it from being too busy. Or you can actually do it with your white gel pen. So if you, just color them with no pattern, just the regular colors, you could go back in with your white gel pen and add some patterns that way. That would be super fun. Or you could do, like a metallic, anything that's going to, acrylic markers, you can do anything that's going to be opaque, that's going to go right over your color. It gets a little trickier trying to do it with other colors of markers because things can get muddy. But if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to bring in other colors, it would just make the card a little busier, which isn't a bad thing. It's just the fact of the matter. And you would need to use colors that were analogous, which means they're next to each other on the color wheel, and stay away from complementary colors, because complementary colors, when they mix, they get muddy, they make brown, it's not pretty. So here I'm doing that same kind of diagonal stripe that I did for the is, but I'm just doing it in both directions, which is going to create that kind of fun little crosshatch design. For the hearts, I did the same thing that we did previously. I just tried to mix up which hearts went where so they weren't right on top of the same colors. And then again, adding that cast shadow. You can choose whether or not you want to add the cast shadow to just the letters or the letters and the other elements. I chose to add them to the hearts as well, just because I prefer all of it to look a little bit more three-dimensional. But each one of these, is going to be something different that, maybe you don't love the patterns, but you like the gradient, so you're going to do the gradient. Or maybe you don't love the cast shadow, but you like the white highlights. They're all just different ways to do things. So for this one, this reminds me of Rainbow Bright so bad. And I can tell you that, most of you will be able to tell what generation that I was born in from just me saying that. So this one, what I'm doing is I wanted to still do the rainbow because I love rainbow. And, but I wanted to do each individual letter a different color. So not blending them. And I have found the easiest way to do that is to just go in and kind of mark the letters. So I took the lightest color of each one and I just put a dot. So that way, when I went in with my reds, I could color all of my red letters at one time and then all of my orange letters. And this is just going to be kind of a time saver. For how I added the shading here, basically I am doing the opposite of my cast shadow. So for my shadows, shadows are down and to the left for the cast shadow. So when I was coloring the letters, I did the darkest portion up and to the right. So that way my highlight is going to be contrasted by my cast shadow, and the darkest shadow portion of the letter is going to be right up against that white. So it's going to help give it a very three-dimensional look. This one is a little bit more, I would say, of a intermediate type of shading, and it just requires a little bit extra thought, but definitely not impossible to achieve. So each one I'm going to go in, I did all of my red at one time. Now I'm going to do all of my orange, so on and so forth, until we've got them all colored in. I don't know if it was the coloring of the words or I think it's the little stars. Truly, I think it's the little shiny stars that are in here that really are sending Rainbow Bright vibes. But when I was little, this is a little bit of a story time. When I was little, I loved Rainbow Bright, and I had all of the little dolls. I had the little puppy and everything. And my poor mother, when she would tuck me in at night, I would get into the bed and then I would make her, and I say make her because we all have been held hostage by a toddler if we have kids, right? I would make her tuck in all of my dollies next to me. So all of my little Rainbow Brights would be like on the left and right of me, and I would be in the center with the covers pulled up to my chin and all of my little dollies, and that is how I would sleep. I'm sure that's not how I stayed sleeping, because I'm a mover and a shaker, but that is how I made her put me to bed, with all of my little dolls, with just their little chin sticking out, with just my little chin of curly hair all over the place sticking out of the covers. And actually, I was just over my parents the other day, and Caitlin had been over there last weekend. And when I walked in, they had my little Rainbow Bright puppy. I can't even remember his name. I was like so in love with them, and now I can't even remember the name. Do you believe that? But anyway, it was on the table, and I was like, where did you unearth that thing from? And she's like, Caitlin found it in the basement. And I was like, oh, well, it clearly needs to be, given a good wash. And she was like, yeah, but I got to sew one of his little like pom-pom at the end of his ears was coming off. So she was going to sew it and wash it so Caitlin could play with it. But I just got a little giggle out of that. I was a massive Rainbow Bright fan. Also She-Ra and He-Man. When I went to kindergarten, my mom used to have to tape She-Ra for me and He-Man because I can't remember if I was probably in the day class and not the afternoon. So like I would go to kindergarten when it was on, because back then kindergarten was half days, and so she would have to tape it on our little VHS tape, and then that way when I came home I could watch it after. Oh, my mom's such a rock star, man. Like all the stuff I shouldn't even say I made, because she could have told me no. She chose not to. She was wonderful. So yeah, she taped all those little things for me so that I never missed my show. So these kids nowadays, they just plop down and search for the show that they want, and they just start right back where they left off. They'll never know the pain of having to make sure that you taped it on your little VCR, or yelling to your sibling, "It's back on." They'll never know any of that. But we do, don't we? So anywho, now that the cast shadow is added, I am going to do the highlight as well. This time, because I shaded it slightly differently, I am making sure to put the highlight on the opposite side of wherever I did my darkest shading, to help with that kind of three-dimensional look. And then this is the last one of the coloring. So with Clean and Simple Designs, there are some card making rules, I guess, in general. But with Clean and Simple Designs, typically you have to have a large expanse of area that is uncolored or there's no pattern on it, nothing like that, to qualify as a clean and simple card. One of the ways that I like to make them a little bit more fun, is by adding foam tape. So adding several different depths of layers, and then also falling back on that contrasting colors. Remember, we talked about in the beginning that you can use complementary colors for kind of a wow. You can do the same thing with black and white, and it will really help your card design kind of shine. The other two things that you can add, which I think are fantastic to Clean and Simple cards, are glossy accents. So I'm adding that to all of my seeds. This is going to dry clear and be 3D, a nice smooth little seed that they'll be able to feel with their hands. And then the other thing that I add, there's several different kinds on the market. I will always prefer Stardust Stickles. Stardust Stickles take on the color of whatever is behind them. They are beautiful. They are my favorite stickle, and they are typically the only stickle I use, honestly. So that one we popped up on foam, and then we're going to do the glossy accents, but we're going to mix it up. We're kind of going to add both of them. So we're going to do the glossy accents on the orange stripes. So we're doing a little bit at the bottom and then kind of dragging it up the darkest side of the orange, which is the left-hand side. And then for the yellow stripes, we're going to use those Stardust Stickles. First, I'm going to do a little half circle around the top of the sun. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the rays, a little bit at the bottom, and then up the darkest side, which is the left-hand side, but that one will have glitter. So they'll have a mix of them. For this next one here, obviously a very simple kind of white on white helps the coloring pop, which I like. I am going to use my Stardust Stickles to add glitter to just the stars, and I'm going to leave that one as it is. This one very much gives me a sticker vibe, and stickers are super popular right now. You might even be able to stamp this on sticker paper and turn it into a sticker. but the white outline on the black, very much giving sticker vibes, especially with the hand lettering. And this one, again, we're going to combine the glossy accents. So I did the glossy accents on the bigger hearts, and then I'm going to go back with the Stardust stickles and get the smaller hearts. Those, you just want to make sure with the glossy accents that you're getting any of the air bubbles. You just have to like pop them with a pick tool or a needle. This one is the one I told you, remember, we're going to do a little bit differently. This one, I wanted to do that kind of more dramatic, bright colors on black. It is a more time consuming. Okay, I'm not going to pretend like it's not. It is definitely more time consuming. But I think it looks so cool, man. I just really think it looks so awesome. So originally, I went in with the black marker and I colored all around the edges, but I also left in the shadow that I added. That gray shadow, I did not go over it with the black. Then I trimmed down my little black piece. You want to make sure that you go over the edges to make sure you have no white peeking through. And then I'm going to glue that to my black cardstock. From there, I am going to pop that up on foam tape and have just kind of like an extra wide white border. But then instead of doing the white highlights on the letters themselves, for this one, I'm going to do the white as the shadow. So that gray that I've already put down, I'm just going to go right over top of that with the white gel pen, and it looks just so fun. Like, it's so playful and it's really dimensional, and I love the way that this one looks. It does require a little bit more work. I have no issue with that because I was so happy with the way that it looked in the end. I also did add the Stardust stickles to the hearts for this one. I did not add any glossy accents. So you could add gems to this. You could add, other types of lacquers or drops or things like that. But I just kept them super clean. Here's a little recap of all of the ones that we have made. It makes my clean and simple heart happy. I hope it inspires you to maybe play around with some of these smaller sets because they really can make a big impact. So that's it. That's all 5 cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.